But hello, everybody. Welcome back. Before we do anything, if some of you out there know what Brain Gym is, you could stand up and cheer because I'm going to have you do a brain gym thing right now. Which, if you're where I'm at, you're kind of starting to have a lower engine, and you're oh gosh, when is this going to be over, kind of thing. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to. We're going to actually can do this sitting down. Actually, Beth Ellen, this is an easy one. Sitting down.
Well, that's fine, but I need to stand up.
All right, so what I want you to do is, this is kind of tricky if you've got headphones on, but if you take, and I want you to curl the tops of your ears, just curl them down, not in toward your head, but out away from your head, just really gently, and just massage your tops of your ears and curl them a little bit, just very gently. This is a great vestibular activity for kids when they're starting to flag. I just like to say it's magic and just leave it at that. It really, really works. Another thing, if you don't like touching your ears, is you can take your hand and gently but firmly put it on your other forearm and rub it back and forth from your shoulder to your hand. And you can do it on the inside of your arm. That's a little more sensitive. The outside of the arm, I think, is a better choice. But again, it doesn't have to be fast. It can just be back and forth, back and forth. What this does is this gets the brain kind of woken up. As an aside, if you go in the same direction like you're petting a cat, that will bring a kid's engine down, which sometimes is a good thing. So you have those of you who may recognize what this is a brushing technique, and as far as I'm concerned, OTs who do brushing techniques are one step above superhero. They are amazing people. So if any of you are OTs, my hat's off to you. The only other one I'll tell you for this little time, and this is another freebie, is sugar-free lemon drops. The sour sensation is a great engine waker-upper, so to speak. And if your kids love sour, it's a good thing to have when they start flagging. And usually, when you go to seminars, there'll be chocolate out about this time. Beth Ellen, where's our chocolate? But sour is actually even better, or sipping something through a straw. All of those things wake up the brain, get the brain back, and I recommend them highly. I use them all the time. All right, so what I want to do is I feel like a talking head here, and I don't want to be a talking head. I want to have some interaction and such. So I'd like to treat this, and Beth Ellen, you're going to help me, and Samuel, you're really going to help me because I am not up to speed on having folk come in and talk and come out. But I really want to have an interaction with you all with regard to what goals are and what they are not. So I'm going to do a real quick thing here. I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm using I sent you guys, I think it was 6 handouts. They are not in any order, okay? And the first one I'm going to show you, you don't even have, so you can just draw this one out. But let me share my screen here quickly.
So when she wants to have us to participate, you're going to want to, I forget what it's called, raise hand or request to speak. It's request to speak. And then I'll see showing up on this end that there are requests to speak, and I will acknowledge those and grant you permission, in which case then your video, or if you don't have video, your audio will come up in the little queue at the bottom like it is currently.
Okay, I guess, can everybody see on the screen, it's the kind of a curvy square with arrows. It says plan, do, check, act. And then there's an arrow.
And those of you who were with me earlier today, I introduced this concept.
If you cannot see this, would you guys let us know via the chat? And this is just
those
something I just whipped
earlier,
together.
I did introduce this concept to us earlier. This is the one we had the little globe in the center with the little circles around. So,
yeah. So this is, Franklin, you may remember this from the Deming days. Those of you who have worked in business or whatnot, back in the 90s or so, there was a great push to do what's called total quality management, and it was a Japanese concept that Deming grabbed a hold of. He's an American fellow, and there's some really great simple things about it, and one of them is the Plan, Do, Check, Act pattern, and this is such a simple to apply to. You're talking about goals. You're talking about get the kids out the door. You're talking about if you want to lose weight or you want to add a addition to your house or whatever. It's a really interesting way of thinking because it goes round and round and round, and you continue this Plan, Do, Check, Act pattern all the way through time. And the other thing that I really love about this, and Heather's gonna remember this one from when we worked together with her little one for assignment notebooks. But when you have a purposeful way of doing something, it takes the emotion out of it, and it takes the bad guy out of it. There is no bad guy anymore. So what I mean by that is, you all know, we have to nag sometimes. Come on, sit down. I know you don't want to do math. Sit down. And we have to get into that nasty little spin cycle that we hate, and we know the kids hate, and everybody hates. But if you do something methodically, and you all know this, I'm preaching to the choir here, but when you do something methodically, and especially if you're collecting data on it, and that doesn't have to be something a huge deal. I mean, collecting data can be nothing more than watching, but it allows you to make decisions and act and proact and react based on what is, not some unspoken standard or miscommunicated plan or agenda or whatever. It makes your life easier, for lack of a better way. So what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about is, we're going to just do a talk about what a SMART goal is. And please understand, I know you're probably hitting your overwhelm point. So if you get to the point where you just can't take it in, just sit and listen, and don't try to, what am I trying to say? Don't try to absorb this all at once, because you can't. But we're going to just briefly talk about what goals are and what they aren't. And I'm going to be using this kind of language to talk about that. All right. So I hope that you all can see this. If you should have this particular sheet in your handouts. And basically, and the other thing, guys, you can Google any of this stuff and find even better handouts on this stuff than what I've done. This is everywhere on the internet. SMART goals, Plan, Do, Check, Act. Any of these terms that we use, just Google them, and you're going to find somebody out there has done them way better than I have. But essentially, a SMART goal, they use the word SMART as an acronym for 5 different piece parts that a goal needs to have. Okay, so specific means right down to the money. Tell us exactly what it is you want. I love to use the example, and Beth Ellen used weight loss, and I'm going to use weight loss weight. Yeah, that's not so specific. And when you're not specific, you get lost really easily. Not only you, but kids, because there's so much that can be defined within that. And we all know we come to things with different expectations. So specific is a good one to remember. So you can see my examples here, and these aren't terrific examples, but they get the point across. You can see that I'm not just saying that I want my boy Josh to not have to be directed every time he sits down to do a piece of assignment. I make it a little more specific. Number of times that I have to redirect him during a chunk of time. Okay, so you can see what's going on. Keep going across the worksheet page, you'll see it says benchmarks, celebrations. Benchmarks, think of a bench. A bench is where you sit down because you're tired of walking or you're going to get ready to walk or whatever. A benchmark is where you start. Okay, it's you got to know what is. So before you can decide what you're going to do, you want to know what is. And so what I put here is an example of, I was watching Josh, when I was measuring this for him, and I was noticing that especially in the morning time when he had a 45-minute chunk of study time, I was redirecting that kiddo 5, 6, 7 times, and I was recording that, and that was my baseline. That's what I was starting with. That's what is. Okay? So specific, look at specific things. Next part of the SMART goal is measurable, okay, and that's that you got to be able to measure it. You just have to, because that takes it out of the bad guy realm, okay? If you can show your kiddo that, well, actually, over the last 2 hours, I have had to redirect you about 10 times. See these tally marks here? That totally makes you not a bad guy, okay? Because you're showing what is. And yet can't necessarily argue with data, although Franklin probably could give us lots of comments about that. But the point is that data is not necessarily, well, shouldn't be emotional. All right. So again, you can see across that I'm getting specific about what I mean when I say redirects, and how many I want to see reduced, and how many I'm okay with, and that kind of stuff. Achievable is the A, and again, concrete and discrete. Make sure it's something they can do. A lot of times when you start digging into goal writing, it feels like, oh my gosh, I've got to write 75 goals just to get this kid from point A to point B. No, you don't. No, you don't. But you do want to have the kid's capacity be the thing that determines how much you ask of them. And this goes for you too. If I go back to my really wishy-washy goal of I want to lose weight, well, I could do that in a lot of ways. One way is starving for 2 months. I mean, come on. That's not so realistic and not so achievable. So, you guys know your kids better than anybody else. I'm sorry, you just know them better than anybody. It has been their life, your study. So know it's achievable. Don't make them so easy that they're just going to fly through them, but certainly press them to have to take that extra step. Realistic, again, don't be putting something up there that just isn't going to happen. By the end of 2 weeks, my kid's going to have all his homework turned in. If your baseline data tells you they haven't turned much in 2 weeks, that's not so realistic. Okay, make it be realistic. I love the word elegant. I think that's more of a technology term nowadays than anything else. Elegant not only means a beautiful woman in a gorgeous dress or a handsome man in a tuxedo, but it also means a process that just organically flows. Okay, and that's what you want to look at with your kid. Your kid's doing stuff right now that just organically comes out of them, and it's fun to watch. Some of it's not so fun to watch, but some of it is. And now, an example would be, and again, those of you who have boys, Legos, watching my sons, who are now 17 and 22, play with Legos and watching the creative process that they go through is such an elegant thing. And I could use that process, actually, if I wanted to, as a basis of a goal for helping my 17-year-old, for example, to transfer that process to a project process that's due for school, let's say. And that's what you're looking for, is elegance, streamline, clear, reinforcing. And Beth Ellen said this earlier, and I'll reinforce it. Don't set your goals so that they're negative. Make them a positive focus. It's easier to measure if you're striving for positive versus marking all the times down negatively that something's happened. You'll find that data collection is a lot easier marking the things that are positive. And the last one, it's hard to read on my screen, but those of you with the handout, it says time bound. Oh my goodness. Please make sure your goals have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Okay, now Beth Ellen was talking about purpose and vision, and that's a little bit different in that that's where you want to go. That's the big picture. okay? But goals really need to have a beginning, middle, and end because you do not want to be a slave to them. In fact, everything that I'm going to talk to you about with regard to goals and assignment notebook and processes and habits, do not become a slave to them. They work for you, all right? So understand that nothing is in stone. It might be in pen, but it's not necessarily in stone. And the whole idea, and this is that total quality management coming out of me from the 90s, the process needs to work for you. All right? So that's why in that plan, do, check, act process, it rolls over and over, and you're constantly checking and you're constantly acting in refined ways. Okay? So this, I feel like we're still probably a little abstract in how a goal works, but one of the things that I want to do for all of you, especially you that don't feel comfortable right now with this, you're going, okay, I'm just, my head's swimming. I'll work with you on those. Beth Ellen will work with you on those. That's what we do. In fact, your kids, if they're working with me, are going to set a goal. All right? And so what I take them through is the exact thing I'd take you through, and we can come up with a goal together. And if you're still not really comfortable, there's a lot of goals I can give you, and they're very simple. They measure frequency, and you can start even with that if you want. If you would like, one of us to give you a goal or me to give you a goal instead of trying to invent one. So please understand, that's what we do. That's why we're here. Okay? All right, so let's talk about how goals can be seen with regard to an assignment notebook or a G Calendar, Google Calendar. Mostly my concern with kids in this is their workflow, the quality of what they're doing, and their pacing, how fast or slow they're moving. And there's a lot you can tell from that. So you can tell right out of the gates with me, if I'm going to help you write a goal, it's probably going to have to do with one of those two things. What's our quality like? What's our pacing like? And some of you, most of you probably know it when you see it, but you might not be able to describe it, and you need to be able to describe it, because if your kid sees it too, but they don't have the language to talk to you about it. And one of the beautiful things is, and Heather, I want you to step in here if you would please, and understand that when you and your kid have a common language, and the assignment notebook can bring that to you, you become partners so fast. You become the facilitator or the manager, and your student is your worker, and you guys take a different dynamic to being homeschooled. So Heather, can you pop in and talk about the idea of common language between mom and kid when you're trying to measure a goal?
Difficulty. Heather's having a little bit of difficulty. I'm not sure if she's in here. She's been having a little bit of trouble.
She's having trouble? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I was just helping her offline.
Anybody else understand that concept of common language? Anybody want? I just want you to have to listen to me talk all the time. The whole idea of making sure that your terms and what you're asking for really needs to be understood by both you and your kid. Anybody have a story about that?
Oh, I'm not monitoring the chat to see if they've got a hand raised. So if you do, can you go ahead and just request to speak, and I'll go ahead and authorize that. Trying to get Heather a new link to get in. No hands, Shannon.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Well, when we get Heather back in, I'm sure she'll have lots to tell you about. Put it in this context. When you're working with peers in your business or whatever it is you do for a living, you know how important it is that everything is understood in a common way. That needs to extend to your kids, all right? So the assignment notebook is a place where that can happen, All right. One of the things that we want to think about when you're talking about Google Calendar and assignment notebooking is the kind of the kind or the style that you use. And so this is the first place you want to talk to your son or daughter about common understandings of terms. So we've got two terms here. One of them is diary and one of them is agenda. Now there's lots of ways to keep a calendar and keep scheduling, and you know that and I know that, but let's make it easy on ourselves and look at two basic concepts. Diary is just like it sounds. It's a reflective time. You sit down and you write down, what did we do today? What went well? What didn't go so well? What did we accomplish? Page 46 and 47 in the workbook, we got that done. And there are people that prefer to use a diary as a way of accountability and keeping track of your workflow and pacing. And if that is you, that's great. The question is that your kid? So here's one of those common things that you need to find out from your kid. You can see there are pros and cons to each of these. The nice thing about a diary is it really allows you to have what I call a report out or a checkout at the end of a day or the end of a week, and you can just kind of recap. You know, you started off the morning pretty rough. It was hard for you to get up. I know that. But, man, by 12 o'clock, you rallied. And look at the amount of work you've done. You got this page done. You got this ready for Beth Ellen. And these are things that are literally being written down or typed in so that you have a record. Okay. Also, what gets done in a diary is things like, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, what was your mood when you woke up? Oh, it was like a 4. But boy, by 12 o'clock, what do you think it was? It was about an 8. Again, data collection right there too. The negative about this, and this probably is a real eye-opener or a real help for you to decide if it's a good way for your kid to do it, is it requires you to put down detail. And a checkout may take you maybe 15 to 20 minutes. And if that's not necessarily an amount of time you can afford at the end of a day or at the end of a week or whatever, this might not be the way to do it. All right? Agenda. Agenda is just exactly what it is. It's a laundry list of things that need to be accomplished. And again, it's a short and sweet way, and this is the way I would say most of the kids I've worked with over the last 20 plus years, they usually use an agenda format. It's nice because you can do it fast, and in Google Calendar you can do it really fast. You can set repeating events so that every Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock you're going to do Wordly Wise, and it's going to go forever or however long you want it to go. And Google Calendar can just set that for you, and you are totally ready to go. Easy to do, easy to correct, easy to facilitate, makes check-ins. And I use this with my 17-year-old. We sit down, okay, what's on the schedule for today? Let's do a check-in. And we go through the list and go, oh, you know what, that's probably going to take us longer, but we'll keep that in our head. We'll change that. It gives you a chance to be at that proactive end, which is really, really nice. The not so great side of it is that you may lose the nuances, and nuances may be the thing that you're looking at in your goal. An example would be one of the goals that I measured with Josh was we really wanted to track when he started fatiguing during a day, and many of you will recognize that as the kids need a lot of redirection, or they're getting distracted, or they're getting kind of crabby, or that is a sign of fatigue. Okay, brain fatigue. And I wanted to see what was triggering it and when was it getting triggered. So for me, I had to flip into a diary mode because I wanted to write down my observations. Oh, we had to go to the bathroom 4 times during this 45-minute period, or whatever, through observations, and that helped us realize that Josh is pretty good up until about 3 o'clock, and then that boy needs to get out of the house and go for a walk, go fly an airplane, go do something, and absolutely clear his head. All right, now that seems like, well, why didn't you just know that? Well, I did know that, but with my boy Josh, showing him the data was like, you see what's going on here? This is what we saw. And it totally took it out of the realm of, Mom, you think you know everything. You know how that goes. All right, so you can see the examples of how that would look. It's a good place to start when you're doing your plan, do, check, act. Which way am I going to try to use this? Okay. Do we have Heather back by chance? No, we don't have her back. Okay. Okay, here's what I'd like. If you can do this while I'm talking, it would be awesome. Does everybody have a Google account?
So let us know in the chat, please, if you have a Google account. The other thing about the agenda and the calendar that I mentioned to at least one or two of you as we've talked getting you ready for the year is a couple of you have helped you create an agenda to start with and then suggested that you also to use that as a guide, but then track like diary style what's actually happening so we can tweak and adjust the agenda to more closely match what's actually reality for your kids too.
Right.
Heather is back.
All
so
right. Hi, Heather.
Heather, request to speak, and then I'll give you access.
So I don't know if you remember what I asked Heather. Just Heather, can you talk about the idea of having a common language between you and Reagan and how that facilitated getting stuff done?
So in the upper right-hand corner, Heather, you need to click Request to Speak.
No luck?
I haven't gotten anything.
Okay. All right.
Oh, well, I think we're just having some lag here.
Oh.
So Heather, I'm inviting you as a speaker. So you can speak. Yeah, I think we're just having some lag issue. By the way, in the meantime, thank you for those of you who've been on all day with me. Wow, Kelly, Debbie, Laura, and Laura. You guys have been here like the whole day. I'm proud of you. I'm impressed.
No luck?
I'm not seeing it show up. I did grant the access, but I'm not sure why it's not showing.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll go on. I just want to make sure I can give some folk a chance to speak. So we're still, I'm moving into Google Calendar, but we're still kind of thinking in terms of goals. So understand that as we move into this next little piece part, because
Oh, that's me. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go for it. Okay, so the reason I'm asking Heather to talk about this is because Heather and Reagan and I had quite a journey last spring, and it was very exciting, and we all three learned, I think, a lot from each other. So Heather, if you could just talk about the idea of, you remember how you and Reagan, you kind of had a disconnect in common language and expectations, and just knowing how to sync together and move forward by having a common understanding.
Okay, so yeah, this is what I am most excited about, and when I talk about Wings to Soar and, you know, get past the academics and the vision and all of that, I explain that the thing that changed our schooling the most was what happened with Shannon. It was really difficult. We have homeschooled older kiddos, so I know the first year is mind-boggling hard. But Reagan is, you know, I guess a different learner, and so her first year was even more difficult. And I can say that as happy as I was with the academics, what Shannon taught us in terms of scaffolding, and I missed some of the presentation, so I'm not sure if this was talked about, but when she walked us through it, it brought us not only together, it gave us a common goal. It was overwhelmingly helpful, and it really is kind of skills that everybody needs and that kids need in college, but it's difficult to teach them the first year and get them into it. But so happy about that part of the year.
Awesome. I really appreciate that. Thanks a lot.
I don't know if I hit on everything, but I can jump in again if you want me to. Otherwise, I'll just be quiet.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And please, folks, if you have a question, I can't see your questions, but I know Beth Ellen's watching. Let's ask them. Let's have some dialogue here, so that you can get your questions answered at this point. All right. So again, talking about goals in mind, plan to check, act, yada da da da. Why Google Calendar? Why assignment notebooks? Okay. The biggest reason to use Google Calendar is because it's free. Okay? And it works pretty darn good. The Google products, they've spent a lot of time getting things kind of synced together. And I know some folks have difficulty when they're using other browsers and they don't use Chrome. But the long and the short of it is that if your kids can get really comfortable using Google products, and Franklin, I want you to say something a little bit here too, because you're our college fellow. You're setting these kids up for practicing the kind of skills that they're going to have when they hit their secondary education or their post-secondary education. They got to be pretty independent because mama ain't there anymore. And the thought of my 17-year-old, who has autism, by the way, being able to function expertly in the Google product so that he could go to his professors when he gets to that level and go, I'm really struggling with my workflow plan here. I'm trying to give myself this much time, as you can see on my calendar, da 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 da. Those are the words of an independent learner, of an advocate, a self-advocate. And it is really not rocket science. It can be done. And it can be done with these kids who are this age. And it's only going to make their life better. Franklin, I don't want to, if this is going to be difficult, I'm sorry, but Franklin is our university professor. Franklin, when you see kids coming in, are you seeing them come in learning, or is there a struggle still with that?
There was a little lag in the audio there. I was hearing Shannon saying, are you seeing kids as they're coming into college ready to learn, or is there still a struggle there? And I see his hand is raised.
With management. With regard to managing their workflow and their pacing.
I've just acknowledged your hand, Franklin. So I think it just takes a little bit of a delay. And Heather, can you mute your mic?
Sure.
Thank you.
Perhaps then I'll just go on, and if we can get Franklin in on there, I really do want to have him comment. But while we're working on that, I can continue on, I suppose. Can I? Anybody there? Hello?
Sorry. So the software quit when he tried to talk. I re-acknowledged. If he pops up in the bottom of the screen. Oh, I'm here. That says Heather. Franklin's here. Yay.
Yeah, I was in through the webinar software. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I was in through the webinar software, and when I tried to raise my hand, it kicked me out of that and tried to put me through Google Plus, Google Chat.
Okay.
That's what I'm in now. Okay. Yes, I was actually thinking of this before you actually called on me, Shannon, is that the way students manage their time in a university setting is every class is completely independent. There's a syllabus that goes out. There are these due dates. Once a week there's a homework assignment due. But there's no specific information about how they're supposed to balance that with everything else. And I think a lot of kids coming out of high school don't really have an idea of how to do that. They've never had to do that before. And what I'm finding with Daniel in this Wings to Soar program is that he has deadlines for each of his classes. And, he was a 12-year-old last year. He didn't always hit them. But he is required to figure out, to at least to some extent figure out how to do that. Not at the level that a college student is, but he's learning that as he progresses, rather than having a day that's all planned out perfectly and there's every minute is that you have to be here, you're going to be there, you have to be there. He has to figure out how to get the things done he needs to get done in the time constraints without, I think, it probably depends on your child how much micromanagement they need, but the goal is able to just take those goals and turn that into a schedule using a calendar system or whatever method they're using. So
right. Thank you very much for saying that. I'm sorry, did I cut you off? Forgive me.
No, that's fine. That's good.
The thing that moms and dads that you need to know, and Franklin, thank you. That's our goal with these guys. The longer that your kid is with us in Wings to Soar, the better they're going to get at this. We certainly don't expect them to be able to nail this down right away, and that's what my job basically is I'm their coach. I walk them through this every single day, and we do it again and again and again. It's practice, and man, the more they can practice this, the better they're going to be. And you and I both know that they are better at this technology than we are. It is innate in them just about, and to get them comfortable with this tool or any other management tool is so incredibly valuable, because then they have control over their learning. Now, it's always going to be, while there are students, somebody's going to tell them, okay, you need to get this done, but the whole point is they'll go, okay, let me see what my world looks like. And right now you're looking at a world of one of our older students, and they got to go, okay, how do I get this on here? Well, I'm going to take each one of my syllabi, and I'm going to put it on. And pretty soon I'm going to see that, for example, on the 28th there, I got a couple of things due. So this is the concept we want them to get a hold of, and this is how we start doing it. So let's talk a little bit about Google Calendar. If you are not familiar with Google Calendar and you are somebody who can listen and play at the same time, I strongly encourage you to go into it. But you have to have a Google account to do that, okay? Which means you have to have a Gmail address. So if you have one of those, you can do this. If you don't, we'll probably have to talk to you at a one-on-one and get you set. Okay, just a how you get into it. If you're in your Gmail account, you'll notice that Google has these 3x3 black squares. These are the keys right here. When you pull that down, you are going to get the most common things that you can do in Google and any other apps that you might have loaded through the Google App Store. Okay, and you can see right there, there's our calendar right there, and you click on that and it's going to open up in a new window. Okay. What you need to understand is that this calendar, the one that pops up for you, is yours, and it's called My Calendar. Okay? Now, the nice thing about calendars is we can share them. And in fact, that's what I do with all of my kids. If I've got students that I'm going to be working with, and many of yours I am going to be working with, I will make sure that I can see and edit their calendar. Okay? Because I want to be able to help them maintain the calendar. I want to be able to add assignments. I want to be able to take assignments off. I want to be able to give them feedback. So this becomes a communication piece, even more than a typical schedule. All right? So I'm not going to go through the whole product right now. I'm just going to show you basically how you put something on a calendar. All right? And then I'm going to talk to you about the process that I use with kids, color coding things. All right, so I'm going to, because I have everybody's calendar here, I'm just going to go up to my calendar here, and let's look at me, and let's turn off Josh, and let's turn off my Jaden. You can see I can look at everybody's all at once. You can see that there are bars that go across. Those are multiple day events. There are bars that stick within a day. You can see, for example, on Monday, the 27th of July, Josh had an Ocean Hawk appointment. Okay, those are a single day events. Plus, you can see little similar to agenda items or schedule items. These are the individual things that you can schedule, and everything is called an event. So today, if I wanted to schedule an event, I'm just going to point at the day that I want, and I'm going to click. Pop up, this box pops up. Now, what I like to tell folk is, once you get comfortable with this app, feel free to enter your stuff here and accept it and go on with your life. But if you're fairly new to this, I really encourage you to go into the event and edit. And the reason is because you have lots and lots of things you can do. Okay? So today's event that I want to schedule is I want to polish my tiara for the ball. Okay? Whatever. All right? You put whatever in there that you want. Now you'll notice that by default, the all-day event is set. Okay? The all-day events are those bars, and I use those when I'm assigning kids assignments and stuff. So all day will show up as a bar across the top. Scheduled events within time frames show up in a list. All right? So let's not make that an all-day, because I only have one tiara, and it won't take me that long. All right? But you can see I've got a time frame here. If I don't want it to be at 10 o'clock, I can do it whenever I want. I can schedule things down to 5 minutes if I want to. They aren't going to necessarily show up super accurately as 5 minutes, but if you are that, what's the word, anal, you can do that if you want. You can schedule it down. All right, let me show you a couple other things here, because you got to understand this. The nice thing about this, for if you're putting appointments on, like you want to make sure that your kid knows that they're going to Devil's Lake in a couple of days or whatever, you can even put where it's going to be, and a map will show up, which is fantastic. Add a video call. This we use fairly often, because from an appointment we can do a hangout. So if you look at an appointment and you see a little calendar that's attached to that, something that I've posted, or Beth Ellen or whomever, that means that there's a link that you can create a hangout, and that person can call me, I can call them, et cetera, et cetera. This is important to understand, because the calendar, and you'll see it says Shannon Greaves, that's where what you are posting is going to post. So if you decide to use this calendar, have a calendar of your own, and then also hook up with your kid, and you want to post stuff for them, but you don't necessarily need to see it, make sure you're posting it to the proper calendar. Okay? If you want something to post to your calendar and your kid's calendar, you do have to take one more step, and that's called copy it and paste it. Okay? I use the descriptions a lot for keeping notes myself. That might be a nice thing for you. You can add attachments, which is nice. Here's where we get to the part that I love, though, right here. You can color code things. So green can be science. Yellow can be whatever you want it to be. And in fact, I use green, yellow, red when I'm doing assignments to mean different different phases of the assignment, but you can color code this. You can also send notifications. If you have a smartphone, you can hook your calendar up to your smartphone. You can send messages to your smartphone. You can send emails. You can send pop-ups to let whoever you want to let know this is coming up. Josh uses that a lot. It helps him foreshadow, okay, I've got 15 minutes left, so I've got to start making changes in my brain to, go on to the next thing, because it's hard. Transitions for him are hard. Okay? You can set up as many of these babies as you want. All right? If you want it to pop up at 30 minutes and then 20 minutes and then 10 minutes, you can do it. Perfectly cool. Okay? This over here, this is really important. Beth Ellen uses this a lot when she sends you invitations. You can send invitations. Your kid can send invitations. This would be a super fast way to get something on somebody's calendar. The downside of this particular method of doing it is if your student does not accept the invitation, and then you don't know if it's on their calendar or not. So I just like to take the benevolent dictator approach and just put it on there. But this is one way that you can invite your student to post this on their calendar, because you and your student want to have a checkout at 3 o'clock on Friday next week. Okay, so this is where you'd put their email address in. So we're going to go up and we're going to finish this guy here. So I'm going to polish my tiara for the ball. You know what? I think I'm going to repeat that because, I go to an awful lot of balls over the week. So every Saturday at 10 o'clock to 11, I'm going to make sure that my tiara is getting polished. But I know that ball season ends pretty soon, so I'm going to put the end date of the fancy dress season, which let's say it's October 10th. So you can see that starting on the 22nd up to the 10th of October, every Saturday at 10 o'clock, what it's going to post is polish my tiara for the ball. And when I click on that and I say save, we'll go back to my calendar. Oh, looky there. There's me polishing my tiara every Saturday. Very, very simple. Very simple. You can see how this kind of forces an agenda style scheduling, but it doesn't have to. Within here, as you remember, you can have diary entries here if you like. Okay? So it can be flexible. You can look at this by the day, which is helpful for those kids who just don't give me any more information than I need. Your little ones, especially, remember the old, which works great, the whole daily agenda that would be written out on the chalkboard, the teacher would write that out. That's what this can be. You can look at it by the week. You can look at it by the month. 7 days is interesting because it'll take you over a weekend so you can see how things are going. And then again, for those of you that prefer looking at things in an agenda format, there it is, right there. So you have a lot of different ways. Okay? And again, I'm not going through this slowly. That's something that you and I can do one-on-one to help you get this set up, but I do want you to see the power of this. All right, let me talk to you about the system that I put together for kids. And if you have a better system, that is okay. Use it. You're good. So I use the all-day event feature to post assignments. And I want kids to understand that there's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. All right, so to that end, I use these colors. Now here's the cool thing. You can do this exact same color coding situation and not use Google Calendar. And in fact, with the little guys and someone who needs to have a touch piece daily, I strongly recommend you look at the calendar, but that you have this in a written assignment notebook. And again, Heather can talk to you about that a little more because that's what we made Reagan do. And it really works well. So you will see on a calendar begin, and then the assignment will be written on, and it'll be the day I want them to start it. Okay? Then I use continue, and the reason I do that, especially for those first year kids, is that it's hard to remember what it is you got to keep going on. So why not post it? Keep doing Apex Chapter 7, and that's going to go for 7 days or whatever. Okay? Yellow, do check in. Do dates or check in, meaning they're going to check in with me, like if they have a one-on-one with me. I want to know what's going on and I want to see where we're at. Okay, so obviously every assignment has a green, a gray, and a yellow. All right. I use red sparingly because red is such a strong color, and that's why I don't use it as stop, it's do. Red is such a strong color, and we don't want kids to become immune to it, so to speak. So I use red very sparingly, and when I do, it's a big deal. Okay, so when your kid sees red on their calendar, it's going to be from me, and it's probably going to be Shannon's going to be offline for the next 3 days because her internet still doesn't work, you know, or whatever. I would recommend you also use that same mentality that red means, wait a minute, stop the presses, what's going on, kind of thing. We use it too much, they become desensitized to it. All right, so here is kind of a help. This is a written version of how our assignment notebook works, and this is what Heather and I used with Reagan last year, and I feel it works fairly well. So again, in the Plan, Do, Check, Act formula, this is the down and dirty. All right, you can expect that for me, and I'm not going to speak for Beth Ellen because I'm going to let Beth Ellen speak for Beth Ellen. But you can expect from me, if I'm working with your kid, I am going to make sure that on their Google Calendar they will see assignments that start, continue, and do. You should feel free to post things on there too to let me know, for example, we're going on vacation, you know, in 3 weeks, or today they're not feeling so well, or, you know, whatever. Use this as a communication tool, and I will use the description section. Feel free to use it too, but I will write notes in there to help mostly moms, you and I, or dads, you and I, to remember what we talked about, what still has to be done, any other kind of notes like that, okay? So know that the calendar is going to be used that way, and some of you, your kids I have just for Lit and Comp, some of you I have with this process in mind too. So if I've got your kid in an organizational kind of a way, we will be posting all of their assignments on there, okay? Now, if you want to reinforce this, get yourself a notebook, okay? Doesn't have to be anything fancy, just make sure it's got lines so they can write on it. Spiral bound is fine, 3-hole binder is fine. Don't make it super tiny. I would say don't go smaller than half of an 8.5 by 11 sheet. All right, the bigger the better, frankly. But this is a format that I use, and it's one whole page, okay? And it's divided into 6 sections. And there's some things on here that are a little bit different than the typical assignment notebook, and I want to point them out because they have to do with data collection, which has to do with measuring your goals to see if you're accomplishing what you're set out to do. Okay, for obvious reasons, you can see in the upper right why we would have the date, and you know, are you going to be online today, especially if you're not used to that. Put that on there so that they can see it and who it's going to be with. Then right below that, that's where I have the kids list what they have to accomplish today. Notice I'm using color codes. Apex is going to start today, but Alex, we've been working on for a couple days. And those think questions, man, those are due today with Beth Ellen. So, man, I better make sure I've got those down. You notice I also put stuff on there that is not Wings to Soar oriented, which is absolutely what should go on there. And the reason is your kids need to get a grip on the fact that they have a busy day. And you need to have a grip on that they have a busy day. We often get stuck in what's called the tyranny of the urgent, and we never get a chance to step back and go, holy mackerel, we did 20 things today. Oh my gosh, no wonder you're so, you know, tired and fatigued and your brain hurts and you're crabby. And this is where that happens. All right. You'll notice I use like a pink highlighter, report out with Dad at 6 p.m. That's one of those stop the presses, Dad's coming home and he wants to have a report out with you, so you better be ready, kind of thing. Okay. The next section on that left-hand side, this is a place for you to put your data, and we'll talk about data collection in just a little bit, but your tally marks, your comments, your observations, put those on this page. There's no secret to them. Your kids need to see them as much as you do, and this makes it easy for you to go back then and literally count up your tallies if that's what you're using as your data collection method. Okay. Right-hand side, how I feel. You'll notice there's an AM at the top and a PM at the bottom. If you are looking at a goal that studies your kid's engine, and an engine, when I say that, it's kind of an interesting term. It's your internal engine, that motivation that keeps you going, or you're just, no, I have no motivation at all. Sometimes it's good to have a high engine, sometimes it's not good. This is going to be where that common language is going to really come into play. If you're looking at attitude, if you're looking at motivation, if you're looking at fatigue, come up with a common understanding of what how I feel means. Okay? For a couple of our kids, how I feel may mean health-wise. I have a headache right now and I am dizzy. Okay, so that family is going to use how I feel in a physical sense. With Josh, I use it in terms of the engine program. I say, okay, what's your engine at? 10 is really humming, and sometimes you really want to be humming along. 1 is I am melted down, I need to go back to bed, kind of thing. That's how we use it, okay? I think you will find it fascinating to see how your kids rate themselves, because they're hard on themselves, and this is an interesting way to compare that and find out where they're at. Okay? Then that middle section, special notes and reminders about the day, this is where your youngster is foreshadowing what's coming up. Oh, that's right, I've got a lab coming up on Thursday, but I don't have the rubber bands I need. Need to tell Mom to get rubber bands. Okay? So that section really becomes the workhorse in the parking lot, if you will, where you dump all the stuff you need to remember. You notice I've put different comments in there too from Mom and Dad. Maybe you put stickers there for your kid today. You really did a great job online. There's a sticker, and you get 4 stickers this week, and that means something. That's a data collection tool, by the way. All right. So again, if you're working with me and your kid's a first-year kid or they really have organizational issues, I am going to request they have a notebook, and we're doing this on top of the calendar. Let me pause. Does anybody have any questions about what we've just talked about so far?
Heather, go ahead and share a page from Reagan's book that you had there. That'd be awesome.
Okay, and I don't really know how to do it other than using the camera that I just figured out how to use.
Yeah, so just turn your camera back on, because we've turned the camera off. Turn that back on, and then just hold it up and show us. That's great.
Oh, sweet. And hers is smaller, and Shannon is right. A bigger one is a much better idea, but you can see how she feels. I so agree with Shannon. Reagan was always much harder on herself. This was when things were getting kind of stressful, so we had lots of colors. And then carry over, you can see some of them aren't highlighted. And it was just so helpful in meeting each other emotionally, really, because I would be, just like Shannon said, shocked at what she would say when she would, have back and forth with Shannon.
The cool thing about what you're looking at, and it's such a pleasure to see this notebook because I didn't get to, this is the first time I've actually seen pictures of it, is you'll notice that there was a lot of scratching out with colors. And that is a data collection tool, folks. For Reagan, last year, scratching out in red meant, oh, I am so behind on this. If I don't get this done, we used that color in a way to, again, make her stop and go, okay, priority. I got to work on this kind of thing. So, the colors are slightly differently used than when Reagan and I did it last year, but the same concept is there. And again, that tool becomes interactive. It sits on their desk, and it's there all the time. They should never not know where that notebook is, and they've got their yellow pen and their green pen and, whatever. You can use highlighters if you want. I don't care. But the fact of the matter is that book is like, that is the data book, and you can go back into that book and go, as I go scrolling back through here, I see an awful lot of things circled in red here, meaning that you have a priority. I bet you're getting really overwhelmed, aren't you? And you know exactly what they're going to say, but it's not you saying you are not getting your work done. It takes the pressure off you. So please, please, please think about that. All right, a couple more things I just want to tell you about my system that you will see. And let me pop this back up on the screen for you. All right, so you're going to see a couple of other things that I do too here. I am very interested in how much I have to revise for kids. How much am I changing, for example, the pacing for somebody? That tells me a lot about their fatigue levels, and it also brings up interesting information about, is that home getting a little chaotic because things are popping up all of the time and I have to keep changing this due date, and the kid's like, I don't know what, that becomes a conversation point. And again, I'm a homeschooling parent too, so I'm there with you, sister and brother. I'm there. Okay, but it's important, I think, for us to recognize that we do have to revise, but I want you to know when we do. So I'm going to put an R and then the date, and it's going to be right in the bar there, so you'll know that, oh yeah, this was a revision. Okay, you're going to see when we post one-on-one sessions, I think this is how Beth Ellen has done it. It's going to say a one-on-one session with and the kid, okay, or who it's with. I will put notes in the one-on-one sessions. And make sure that you see those too. So, for example, if you're trying to keep track of, gee, have I used my 10 hours yet? My goal is to be very transparent with you on that and say, used 1 hour, available 6, that kind of stuff. And again, you can see those are data points. We can measure those. There again, the how I feel rating. Again, what you use for words for that is entirely up to you. But understand that we want 1 and 10 to be the extreme opposites. Okay, so keep that in your head. And Google Calendar is really great because you can use symbols on Google Calendar. It has emojis, it has stars, so you can use those to mean things, and that's really, really awesome. And I probably around Christmas time I'll start doing that, like we'll put the little holiday in and whatever. You get the idea. Okay, so. And Franklin, I'm going to call on you as well as Heather. I want to talk about data collection. And I don't want to beat this to the ground, but this is not as hard as you think it's going to be. All right? It really, really, really isn't. When you set up a goal, remember the M stands for measurable. And measurable means how many, how long, to what degree, what's the rating. That's the kind of stuff that's measurable. So please, for your own sake as well as your kid, don't set a goal that says Junior will increase his happiness when he goes to do math. There is no way in the world you're going to be able to measure that, or if you can, that's a thesis right there, okay? Make it easy on yourself. What does that mean in terms of long-term goals? It means that you need to take a part-to-whole concept when setting a long-term goal. Getting somebody to turn in their work regularly, on time, all the time, is a process. And so you have to be able to take that process apart and go, what's the first thing the kid really needs to be able to do? Well, they need to know what's due. Aha! There's that assignment notebook page. Okay, there's your first goal. There's your data collection right there. And it's a frequency. How many times per week did my student go back and look at the list as to what they had to do today? And if you have to do it with them, fine. But that's data collection. Okay? So tallies, checklists, rating scales, all that stuff. One of the things I'm going to do for everybody is I'm going to put in a couple of documents that will be available for you all, words that will help you be able to write good goals, good feedback words, words that are not emotional but really say what is. Okay, so that language will be a help for you. All right, so why do you need to collect data? Because you know why. Because it's not based on how much you can nag, redirect, cajole, bribe, or whatever. Okay, you want to take it out of that realm. Let's see, did I get to everything that I wanted to talk about? I think I did. There's that, there's that, there's that, there's that. That's basically where I come from when talking about Google Calendar and assignment notebooks and getting kids in their workflow and their pacing to improve. Now, my boy Josh has been, Beth Ellen has been with you for 5 years? 4 years?
He's entering. He had 1 year in person with me and 4 years with me online. So he's entering his 5th year online, 6th year with me.
Okay, so he's been around a long time. Now, I'm not saying that he does this perfectly, but he is to a point. And again, remember, my kid is a high-functioning autistic kid. He's got Asperger's. Okay, so he's got autism light, if you will. I can count on the fact that not only it will get in the calendar, but that he will review it and that he will know where he is at in what it is that he's doing, and that he will be able to communicate to me, you know, this is harder than I thought. I think I need to take a couple more days. And it's been a long process, but I'm telling you something, to know that I'm going to get the straight dope from my 17-year-old on this, even when he knows he's screwed up, is a very liberating thing, because he and I then become partners and we brainstorm, and he understands this is not personal, it's just what we do. And if I can do this, guys, you can do this. And it's a freeing thing. It really is. So Heather, can you talk a little bit about some of the data collection that you guys did and what you learned?
Okay, so this is my favorite thing. I've started applying the data entry to multiple areas of my life. And one of the things that's sort of interesting about it is when I ask people a question, I am really surprised now that they answer me in a way that indicates they think they know what I'm looking for. And so I'm often will verbally say out loud, oh, I'm just collecting data for myself. I'm trying to figure something out. So I do it in health, wherever I'm trying to educate myself. I'll talk to somebody that's knowledgeable and I'll just try to get the information in. It helps when I do it with Reagan, exactly like Shannon explained, where instead of trying to jump to the end and what I need her to do, I stay, okay, what are you doing right now? What is on the calendar? Help me understand where you are in the process. And that way, and sometimes I don't even really know my end. And that becomes apparent as I'm asking the questions. So, you know, it's just very helpful to us in terms of reducing conflict.
That's awesome. Thanks. I appreciate that. Franklin, this is, hopefully I'll ask this question right to you. You're a scientist. You collect data all the time and in very sophisticated ways. Could you suggest, other than the typical tally marks or check sheet, are there any other kind of simple techniques or processes to collect data based on, you know, kind of what you've seen here that a parent could use? And what, for example, frequency, we know tally marks would work just great. But what about if somebody wants to measure the degree to which something is accomplished. I know that a person could use a rating chart, but is there anything else out there that's simple, that's a method for data collection?
It's a general question. Hello? Am I in?
Yes, you're in. Go ahead, Franklin.
Okay. So back to this idea of a notebook. I have not utilized this with Daniel, and I never really thought of doing that. But it is interesting, something I do with all of my graduate students. I insist they all keep a lab notebook. And what the lab notebook is it includes not just the data they take, like where the files are or if they've written data down, but also their whole process of how they started the test, what they did, any bit of information that they can write down. Because when things go wrong or it doesn't work the way you expect, sometimes what we'll find is we'll go back through and look at their procedure for, we do low temperature physics stuff. They may have skipped a step in the cool down procedure, or they may have not done something exactly right. And if they keep a running log of what they did, and so they kind of like, it's almost, I'm not advocating this for students, but it's a, at 12 o'clock I started this process, and then, I did this next. And it's just a running logbook of what's going on in their laboratory and all their calculations. And a general rule as a scientist is you always keep the lab notebook, and you always write everything down, even if you're not sure it's important, because you'll find out later that it is important. So that idea of keeping a logbook, I think, is something that's very consistent with what scientists do. Now, it's a little different for the students, but so what was your other question? I'm sorry. Can they hear me? Hello?
I am hearing you, Franklin. I'm not sure about Shannon.
Okay.
I think the other question was, is there a way to help tally things, or like rather than just tally marks, are there other ways to help maybe qualitatively log, how something's going that you use in the sciences that maybe we can help apply?
Yeah, I mean, everything's more numbers based in the physical sciences. Besides this, documentation of how things are going. Sometimes you document things that you don't. I guess that would be the key, is you don't know if they're really important, but then you find out they are later. I think this idea of documenting the child's mood, and you could document how much time they spend on something, because some days they may have success working on something. Maybe they're doing vocabulary or something, and it goes very quickly, and then other times, at least I found with Daniel, if he's tired or hungry or something, it just really changes the way. And, I think one of the things with children that I recognize when he's hungry or tired and he needs to, take a break and fix that. He does not, though. Because he's in the middle of it, and what your goal, you hope is that they'll eventually get to the point, maybe if they document that, things aren't going so well, and then realize later, when things aren't going so well, maybe I should stop for a minute, and maybe I do, because I had this thing where I would pick Nathaniel up from school when he went to regular school, and he would be grumpy in the car. It would just be like so I started bringing a snack bar with me, and he would get in the car, and I hand him the snack bar, and he would eat, and it was like a totally different person. But he just didn't have the capacity to know that, as a third grader, that he was hungry, and that's why things weren't going very well for him. So maybe if, I'm just thinking on the fly here, maybe if they document, how they're feeling, they tried this and it didn't work very well, and they were having, they struggled with it for 20 minutes, half an hour, and then it wasn't going well. maybe that's some data that could be useful, not just for us as parents, but for them to come to the realization that, hey, you know, maybe if I try to do my Wordly Wise at 10 o'clock at night, it's not a good idea. I don't know.
So that tracking log, the data tracking log that Shannon was showing us earlier, that same kind of idea. And again, it's not judgment. It's just this is what was, and you can then go back and on the checkouts, like she was talking about, you can go back and look at the data together, and we're going to help you all along that process. You know, we're going to help you with that. Heather, can you speak to how that's played out with you? Because I know Mrs. Greaves worked with Heather. We cannot, Shannon. I don't know why we're not hearing you. That's why I'm kind of I jumped over. Heather and Mrs. Greaves and Reagan worked together, kind of refining the system that we're talking with you all about this past spring. They were our little test case to help us with this. And so, Heather, if you could speak to that as well.
Well, I think what it does is exactly what you've said. It takes the sting out of it. It takes sort of the idea that I'm going to be upset about something. We're just going to look, see what happened. And, you know, Reagan is not as emotional as I am. So in that previous, when you're shaking out who you are, it's sort of important to know who you're dealing with and who you are. And this process really helped us figure that out. When Reagan, everything Franklin said, when she is hungry, everything changes. So we can just sit down, get her some food, look at the calendar, okay. And also the other thing is looking at the calendar, like Shannon mentioned, for the day was really helpful to Reagan because it wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't the month or the week. So when she would finally sit down with me and we would look at it piece by piece, she could chew it. You know, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And that's what was so, and it helped me. So.
And Reagan is 10?
Yep, Reagan's 10, and she is, you know, brilliant academically, or, you know, excels in that. And, you know, can I just say one thing about that as well? When we enrolled with Wings to Soar, I just said, oh yeah, Reagan can test that. She doesn't care about that. She doesn't mind sitting, because that's all that she had been exposed to. So they would just test her, and because she didn't fuss or complain, she would get tested every day and higher, and I said, no, she excels at that. You know, when she got home and she was in a different environment and she was more in control, she hated it. And so it was really interesting to see her process and find out the best way she learns in terms of time, making her own schedule, what she was in control of. So.
If you weren't here earlier, I strongly recommend going back and the teaching all kinds of learners that I did this morning. You might want to look back at that. At the very least, take a look at the handouts from the email I sent last night. I know one of you, I think it was Laura, was saying you hadn't gotten those. I will get those to you after the workshop. That there's profile of the student as a learner, checklist for them to fill out if they're third grade and up, but you can also fill it out. The dispositions chart is huge. You understand how you're wired and how they're wired, and really fill out the profile as a learner for yourself as well as for your kids, and think about how that's working. The kinds of outcomes that Heather and Franklin are talking about are exactly the kind of thing we're looking for. SMART goal language yet. But could you all just input in the chat kind of a general gist of if you got an idea of what your first goal maybe should be for your homeschooling with your students this year, what the first goal we want to develop is. So if you could put that in the chat, again, it doesn't have to be in all SMART goal language. We're going to take a couple of these and we're going to walk through the process of making it a SMART goal. But we need to see what goals you're starting with. So again, just what would you see after the things you've experienced today, the exercises we've done? What would be good tentative first goal? And I want to think of one. What would be your highest priority first goal for your homeschooling right now? There's always tons of things we could set, but we need to zoom in on one of them and find success with that one. Okay, so Heather says, organizing a schedule reflects both my need as a mom, seeing process, etc., and meeting Reagan's needs as a student child, being able to manage the schedule we create. Laura says time management. Those are both similar requests.
Time management is a good place to start. So why don't I start with that one, okay, everybody? I'm going to put on the screen how I would do this, okay? And I'm going to use the assignment notebook, the written page, too, just so that you could see what my plans would be and how I would handle that. So I'm going to steal the screen. This point should see that says goal at the top, and it's a grid, and date, online today, when, who, I am, how am I feeling.
It just came up for us.
If anybody does not see that, let us know. What I make the kids do is when I do a checkout with them at the end of the day, they fill this page out just like I'm doing it, so that tomorrow when they sit down to do a check-in, it's all staged and ready to go.
Can you clarify for us what you mean by check-in and check-out? What does that mean that you're doing,
Sure.
please?
You bet. A check-in is, think about when you go to a hotel and you check in. Okay, you know, I'm here. I booked a room. You know, and you pass back the essentials between you and the concierge or whatever. Okay, that's really what a check-in is with your kid. You're just checking in to see how are they feeling today. You know, what are we going to do today? What's our plan today? What do we need to get on the list? You know, it's just it's like what you would do at a morning meeting. Another word for that is morning meeting. You do that at work pretty much all the time. You'll have a quick check-in, and check-ins are fast. They don't need to be long. I would say don't go any longer than 20 minutes, if at all possible. And if you're finding that you have an issue, then that needs to be scheduled in the day to deal with. But don't do it necessarily in a check-in. Okay? So again, when you start a check-in, you know, find out how each of you is feeling. You know, how you doing today? Was waking up tough today? You know, whatever. And then also you check in too. Say, you know, well, I'm with you, sister, because man, I had a headache last night and I found it really hard to get up. That kind of information is really important. Just like what Franklin was talking about when he said that, you know, Daniel would get in the car and he'd be grumpy, and he did a little fact finding, a little checking in, and realized, you know, it had to do with food. You know, that's great. A checkout is just the reverse of that. You do later in the day. You know, you kind of sum up what went wrong, what went right. You know, what can we do better tomorrow? It's kind of the same thing as a report out. A report out's generally longer. Somebody's going to present something in a report out. Okay, so why don't you tell us how you did on your math and what you learned about perimeter and area today. That would be more of a report out, because that would take longer. But check-in and check-outs are really great language to get used to, because they mean something and the kid knows it's fairly short.
This is a check-in, check-out form?
I'm going to be working in the kids' assignment notebook, and we're going to see how this page supports a goal of time management. Okay, so time management is our goal. All right. Well, we want to make that measurable. Okay, so one of the first things we need to do is, what do we want to know regarding time management? Well, we want to know lots of things, but let's just pick one thing. We want to know how many times during the day and in what subject do I find myself having to redirect my lovely young child, because what happens is it seems that the more distracted they get, the less they get done. Okay, so I want to see what's really going on here. Okay, so my time management goal might be, like what I had for Josh, is determine how many redirects are done, and you could do it during a certain time frame. Okay, you don't, if you want to do it for a whole day, that's fine. It's going to keep you very busy. But let's say how many redirects are done between 1 and 3 p.m. All right, because I think we all pretty much know our kids are going to start, you know, flagging about that time. And why do we want to do this? Well, to see what type of redirect am I doing, and how often am I doing it? Let's be really significant and let's say, also, what response do I get? Now we kind of know what that's going to be, but just for fun, okay? Just for fun. So, and then what we would do is the kids would fill out, this business, and we'd have them start the day out. How you feeling? 1 through 10. 1 is, man, I want to go back to bed because I do not want to be doing this. Versus 10, hey, man, this is the best day ever. And so we find our little one gives us a 4. Okay, so right there I'm already going, okay, so we're not starting out so good. Okay, there might be a stressor there, and that may be something I need to watch for. So then we put our assignments in here, blah, 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 what we're going to do today, and you color code it, and you do all your fun things there. And over here in special notes, your brain is already going, okay, we've got at 5:30, we've got basketball, and then at 6, we've got piano, and then I have to be home by 8 because I got to get... well, let's make it a little more. Let's say 7:30 dinner, and then 8 o'clock is bedtime and reading. Okay, so you're starting to see already. Here's some more stuff that you've put in here. Blah blah blah. You get what I'm doing here. Okay, you're already seeing within this first 10 to 15 seconds. This is a packed day. And your kid's starting out at a 4, okay? So prediction says you probably are going to see a high number of this today. We don't know. We'll find out. We'll see. All right, so you go through and you get this done and you get this done, and man, now it's about noon at number 3, okay? Let's say it's at noon about now. And you'll notice if I'm doing this way, this is a diary type of thing. So I'm going to put down here in my data at 12. Okay, I wound up redirecting my kid once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. And this would be in, let's say, 45 minutes. Okay, and whatever that time frame, it doesn't matter. We're just hypothetical here. The other thing that I noticed that I'm going to put down is the response I got back was grouchy. Kind of irritated. The redirects were, did you finish that problem? I mean, I'm finding myself saying that over and over and over and over. All right? So clearly what we're seeing here is that something has set this up. And by noon, we got the grouchies. Here's by 2. So then, of course, by 3 o'clock, shutdown. Just not going to get any more done. Just not going to happen. PM, how do I feel? Well, say we've got to write at 3 o'clock, and we did this at 5 p.m., and at how I feel, actually, he or she rates himself 5. Because between 3 o'clock and 5, you just let them go because you were just getting nothing, and their score went up. So you can see if our goal is time management, and our more specific part to whole goal is what kind am I doing it and what do I get back in response, I think you can see pretty clearly what went on during this day. The problem we've got here is we've got no real breaks. We've got this huge list of stuff that's going to go on. Their day started out low. And why do you suppose their score might have gone up at the end of the day after between 3 and 5 o'clock? Because we forgot to take that mood temperature, so we took it at 5, but it went up to 5. Well, you know why? They had 2 hours to decompress. Okay, especially if you let them go watch TV, or let them go eat, or let them go play Legos, or let them go do something. That is all huge information for you. You know what? In our checkout, today was it? Yes, it was, Mom. And, here's why I think it was a hard day. You tell me what you think, and then you review the data. I had to talk to you 8 times today about redirecting, and I really don't want to do that. What in the world can we do to help you redirect? Well, Mom, can I have a break between, every 20 minutes? Can I have a 5-minute break? Hey, that's not a bad idea. And that's when you start That's that plan, do, check, and the act is, oh, let's try that tomorrow. And that's the kind of thing we're looking at. It's on the paper. They can go back. They can look at it. They can come to the realizations themselves. That would be how I would measure something like I would do. So I would measure that probably over about a 3-week period. At the end of the week, I would go back and literally count the frequency. All right? You know, in this last 3 weeks, you haven't really given off anything higher than a 5. Wow. What do you think's going on there? I'm really getting sick of piano lessons, et cetera, et cetera.
And I'm going to screen share an alternate response to the scheduling question of an example, a very different approach than what Shannon's sharing that I use with some of my clients. So this is more of the agenda approach. And this is more of a, hey, we're going to lay out clearly, here's what we're going to do. And I would recommend, in fact, the family I helped create this for, I recommended that they, one, notice I built in movement breaks. We made them short because we also wanted them frequent. We didn't want there to be a lot going on in between, you know, probably max of a 20-minute chunk of time that they were doing something before they had a chance to do something that was going to get them up and moving. We built in frequent 5-minute breaks. I also intentionally built in the lighter the color, the probably more hard work it was going to be, the more like work. And so I purposely put the Spelling City, which is going to be a little more fun, the multisensory practice, a little bit more light, as I knew that we were going to be getting towards lunch and going to need something a little bit lighter. I know that Fast Forward takes a lot of brain energy, put it first thing in their day. Also notice that 11 o'clock was when we started because that's when this family told me that their kids function well. They said their best window is between 11 and 2. So we said, okay, their core academics need to happen between 11 and 2. Also notice this is one kid. This is a 8-year-old dyslexic. This is a 6th grade brother. So we built in a plan for both. When I built this plan, I built it showing things that were on the computer versus things that were not in the purple and the green as a way to just kind of visually see. And as I was helping build the plan, I intentionally, very, very intentionally, tried to mix those up throughout the day. I also very intentionally put things that I knew might take a little bit more of mom and things that would be a little more independent for each of the boys opposite one another so that they could manage that. But I've also suggested to this mom that she be then just keeping track of what did happen. And so she can use that to check against when she's doing a checkout, when she's checking in, is doing our success code. We can check and see what's happening, and we can guide her toward whether she needs to, do we need to adjust the schedule, or do we need to adjust what we're doing? You know, sometimes we create a schedule, no schedule set in stone, and you're going to need to make adaptations and adjustments. I used to do this when I ran a physical brick-and-mortar school, and I had between 3 and 12 kids at a given point. And I would actually have each day of the week, so if you got a lot of kids, I'd have a day, and I'd have a column for each kid next to each other. And I color-coded at that point for subject areas. So I had each subject so I could see, I could quick glance. And I put the kids, if you got a lot of kids, I listed them youngest to oldest. So I could just glance and I would be like, oh, okay, that's so-and-so. Whether I could see the name on it or not, I knew that the youngest kiddo was doing math right now. Or at least that's what they were supposed to be doing. But I purposely built in things that were going to need more time that might need me versus more time might need the other. And notice, near the end of the day, we built in more of the fun stuff. The history, the science, those kind of things we built in because they're going to still be able to have attention for that, whereas doing more of their skill work, writing, reading, the focus skill stuff is going to need to happen earlier in the day. So just another example for those who might want scheduling guidance and suggestions and help. That's another angle for you.
Beth Ellen, Bethel asked a question, and I've been responding back to her, and it talks about what do we mean by redirect. That's a really excellent question, Beth. Redirect, behavior that you want to have happen. So if you got a kid who's sitting at their computer doing Wordly Wise and you see the head turn and look out the window, you know they're daydreaming or their brain is going and checking out and going to Pirates of the Caribbean or something. You have to deal that, and they should not be negative. They should be actually a positive kind of thing. You can physically go over to the child, gently put your hands on their shoulder or on their head, and literally redirect their head back to the screen. Cue, but the verbal cue probably shouldn't be a command. Get back to work. That probably is not a good way to do it. But question cue. Hey, what question were we on again? Oh, and you know what that does is it jars them back to reality kind of stuff. So a redirect is a way to interrupt a distractible kid. A kid who's distracted and bring them back to horrible behavior, but it needs to be done in a very non-judgmental kind of way. And the reason is because you're trying to and you don't want to have anything negative when you're conditioning somebody because they're going to associate it with the behavior with something negative. You don't want that. Doing that stroking of the arm to get them to come back and go, literally moving the hand with the pencil, anything like that. And then again, go on the internet and you will find gobs, okay? A kid who doesn't maybe verbally process, doesn't take in verbal cues really well, those would be physical cues, literally moving them and modeling that.
Does anybody else have other questions? Specifically, let's focus on goals for now. Goals, scheduling, tracking, that kind of direction. And does anybody else have a goal that you'd like us to help work with? We really didn't, Shannon, the other thing we didn't do with that goal yet is we didn't specify how is this a SMART goal. You kind of practically showed us what you were going to do. Can you make it very explicit for us how how what you did was a SMART goal?
Sure. Redirects, you might even want to list those down in your data section and write verbal cue, physical cue, what that way. So that's going to be measurable. How often, again, frequency, what kind of response do I get? That's going to be a value. Careful with grouch, because it implies measuring redirects and not trying to extinguish the behavior. Yeah, I am okay with that. So is it achievable? Yeah, because I'm not really asking my kid to do anything yet. Okay? When I do ask my kid to do something and it becomes achievable, I'm not going to ask him to totally not get any redirects. Okay? We'll see if we can reduce it by 1 redirect or by 2 redirects or by only verbal cues or whatever. Then we're a little more achievable. So AR, realistic. Okay, so I'm dealing with redirects. Redirects are a huge issue with my kid. I'm going to be dealing with redirects for a long time. That's a realistic attitude, and it's just the way it is, even if I don't like it. We can't start from expect them stuff if they can't management. Okay, and then the last one, time bound, you saw. And it's not, it'll get me what I want. I mean, when I go, what you got going there, and can you tell me what was going on here, and it will start coming to you because you really are doing this. You just don't have the language yet for it. I give you the process and the language for it.
I have a little tip, if it's okay that I share it.
Oh, please.
Okay, so Reagan sometimes, or I hope it's okay that I use her name, sometimes will become quickly emotionally overwhelmed. And we had some good friends that had a very similar boy, and they gave us a tip that we try not to overuse, but has become really helpful. What we do is, if let's say you say, "Oh, we need you to clean your room," and that's way too much of a task to ask, and there's a complete meltdown. Obviously we can do a better job asking. We can break that down. But what he suggested is asking a math question. And it sounds funny, but when we do that, it somehow, we're not trying to deny the feelings associated with it, but it jumps them out of their emotional side a little bit, and it helps in some unexplainable way get them to feel like the process is going to be okay, because it takes away some of the emotion. I don't know why it works, but we have used it repeatedly with success.
Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate that. If you need help with working through creating your first SMART goal,
Or if you want someone to give you a SMART goal.
true. If you need us to just tell you what your first goal should be, we can do that. Sometimes that's the best way to start. We can help you with that. We want to help you get started. We are planning on sharing that. We're going to share a blank template with them, aren't we, Shannon, about how to do that kind of check sheet that you were saying, the accountability tracking sheet?
Yeah, if the one I did, I'll just make a link to it and throw it in the chat here.
Great.
And you can do whatever you want with it.
And you'll want to make a copy of it rather than just use it, because if you just use it, it's a shared document with everybody. You want to make a copy of that. And then we also have another tool, the form for them to check in. That'll be coming soon. That'll be coming soon. We're probably maybe a week early for that. So we'll have another tool for you to use for a tracking tool for yourself as well. We're probably about a week out from trying to get that ready. Shannon's been having to go to the library in order to get internet access, so it's been a little more limited on when we could get some things done there. We are planning on September 19th, just so you know, to do those of you who are participating in this and wanting this help with taking a look at the data you've gathered between now and then. So if you're using this data tracking, and you're doing the strategy we're talking about, we're going to have another webinar for you. I think it's going to be from 10 to noon Central Time on September 19th to help you take a look at the data and make sense of it and do something with it. And if you're doing success coaching, we do have a few success coaching spots left for those who aren't. We're weaving some of that. All of your kids, if you've got a group class, you're doing at least a limited amount of that. If you have any group classes with us, there's a limited amount of that built into the... Mrs. Greaves just naturally built that into the writing coaching she's doing with your kids. And all of the ILS kids, in addition to your half an hour a week, we have 4 extra at the beginning of the year. There's a few extra. Just let's get them up to speed on this stuff. And it could be them or you, if it's needed. But we do have some other... We've got a few clients who are doing some success coaching with us. And with those, we're mostly doing either, like, first 3 weeks of school, 2 15-minute check-ins, like once on Monday morning and once on Thursday, and or Friday. And then after the first 3 weeks, most of our success coaching kids are going to a weekly, just a Monday morning check-in to head the week off, like a little 15-minute check. You can do it two times a week. That's still an option. That is an additional fee to do that success coaching. It's not... I think we said it was $297 if you want to do the first 3 weeks and then the weekly up through December. And if you do the success coaching, you will have all of the additional parent workshops for the rest of the semester that we're offering. There will be at least 3 or 4 more. Those will also be available to you. If you're a group class kid or if you're a dyslexia intensive family, you already have access to that because we're already providing more support to you and you've already joined with a higher level of commitment. So we're committing back to you at a higher level. I think we're going to call it a day. Please, I would love you to email me feedback on what worked, what didn't for you, so I can do these more effectively in the future. So I would be really, really grateful if you would email me a little bit of feedback to the experience.